Hey, this is Dr. Chad Kish. I would like to welcome you to the virtual presentation of PEP PED 420, which is Adaptive Physical Education or Exercise Prescription for Individuals with Disabilities. I'd like to welcome you aboard our transition from a face-to-face class to your new 100% virtual or online course environment. We're making these videos, or I am making this video, to try to help you obtain all of your course objectives and meet your learning goals. So we'll start off with our Module 10 or Week 10, and we will begin with Unit 3. In Unit 3, we're going to have a couple of different concepts. We'll start with Chapter 17, Facilitating Social Acceptance and Inclusion. Then we will move on for the next 2 weeks to Chapter 20, including students with disabilities and community-based recreation. Within this unit, we will embed our case study that was previously scheduled, so you know your topic. I will send out another list on that with some adjusted assignment details. So we will begin our journey into Chapter 17, Facilitating Social Acceptance and Inclusion. So hopefully you've seen Module 10 or the Week 10 module on Chapter 17 that has your to-do list, background information, and things such as student learning objectives. So our to-do list for this chapter, hopefully you've read Chapter 17 in our Adaptive Physical Education 4th edition textbook, Facilitating Social Inclusion and Acceptance. Make sure you read that chapter. You need the background material, especially with just having virtual presentations here. We don't have a good chance to have a question and answer or a real time discussion. Then hopefully by now you figured out how to watch Chapter 17 video presentation. The link to this was in Canvas. I developed it at home from my home office. Next, you should read the handout on the case study assignment and then watch the video on the updated information on the case study assignment. And those both links are in the Canvas Module 10. Next, we have our assignments. Our assignments for this week's module are a social inclusion activity development. It is due Thursday, March 26th by 8 p.m. The information is embedded into this presentation. The next activity is Circle of Friends. All of that information is also embedded in this assignment. It's due Thursday, March 26th by 8 p.m. The Chapter 17 review is answering the questions of the chapter objectives, which I'll get to on the next slide, and it is due Saturday, March 28th by 8 p.m. All three of those assignments have a separate assignment link on Canvas, and you'll develop those and submit them just like we do regular assignments through the previous part of the semester. And then the last thing, you should look at your case study assignments that are embedded in the next couple of modules. I'll have those active and live so you can make sure you meet the deadlines for those. We will do a case study paper. You will have your case study presentation, a visual assignment. Those two you already have information on. I'll just update the deadlines. And instead of presenting to class, you will make a video presentation and submit that for review. The chapter objectives for Chapter 17. Number 1, discuss the importance and benefits of social inclusion. Number 2, list and explain the skills that are improved by providing instruction and activities on social inclusion. Number 3, explain the 6 things that the general physical education teacher can do to help facilitate social inclusion in the physical education classroom or recreation setting. Number 4, describe activities that can be implemented to prepare students without disabilities to be more accepting of peers with disabilities in their classroom or program. Number 5, describe and explain the disability awareness programs, the Paralympic School Day, and the Special Olympics Get Into It model. And then the 7th chapter objective, describe the common challenges and some solutions to providing social inclusion for individuals with disabilities in either the physical education classroom or your community recreation setting. So let's move on. We generally introduce each chapter with an example of a possible student. So we're going to talk about Alex today. Alex is a 4th grader with Asperger's syndrome. What is Asperger's syndrome, you might ask? It is Asperger's is one of the disorders of the autism spectrum group. It is a developmental disorder that has effects on an individual's behavior, their use of language and communication, and their pattern of social interactions. It may lead to some anxiety and depression. They usually have strong language skills, attention to detail, and a good recognition of patterns. The difficulties for somebody with Asperger's syndrome include social interactions, sometimes very limited or narrow interest, and a desire for structure. It may not be the structure that me and you like, but it's a desire for structure the way they see it. So let's go ahead and discuss some things we can do. First of all, Alex, he loves his physical education and activity program, so that's a bonus for us. He's brilliant in math and happens to see numerical patterns. Think of the movie The Beautiful Mind. Alex does not have any motor impairment, so he's able to move around. His ambulatory moves well with other students, but he does require structure and struggles immensely with change. So he likes some structure. He doesn't like when something new happens. He usually wants to stand by specific peers. He has his best friends in the class, and if you try to split them up on different teams, Alex sometimes has inappropriate behavior. He wants equipment to be lined up in order. Sometimes it's not in the order needed for the game, it's in the order Alex likes it. It might be smallest to largest. It might be having all the red colors together. He does struggle to socialize with peers and is considered odd by most of the students that are not his one or two selected best friends. And if things don't go Alex's way, he can become dangerous. He may explode and throw or move objects even when he's redirected. So if we were in the classroom, we would discuss some different ideas. What could we do to include Alex, but keep the general essence of the sport or activity for others? First of all, we should consider our specific modifications or adaptations. You might change the time, change the space, possibly change the equipment, or alter the game rules. We may need to provide some alternative activities, especially for Alex. When we're making these changes, it may need to be made up front, because if we make changes on the fly, we could really disrupt Alex's sense of structure. It's real important when we consider all these to think of how this fits within our case study, because a big part of the case study is understanding how to apply modifications and adaptations for specific disabilities. The number two thing we might consider is, how do we have other students or ourselves as the leader model appropriate behavior? This could be teacher and peer support for Alex to model appropriate social behavior, and that might include reinforcing appropriate actions when Alex does what's right. So why social acceptance and inclusion? One of the greatest benefits of inclusion is an opportunity to learn how to socialize. This could be how to interact with peers, communicate with others, follow directions, behave appropriately in a specific setting. One of the big things we have to do is teach order in a physical education or activity. That might be explaining team rules. How do we line up for a warm-up? How do we line up for activity? How do we split into different teams? And then how do we talk through this and work with our teammates? So a big benefit of inclusion is an opportunity for students with disabilities to learn how to socialize. Next, an individual may have similar interests as their peers. So this can provide an easy opportunity to socialize as teams as students without disabilities and students with disabilities can discuss things like, who's your favorite team? What's your favorite sport? Do you like LeBron? Who's better, Kobe Bryant or Michael Jordan? So there's a lot of similar interest because of the age group. Next, another important thing is it provides an opportunity to learn sensitivity, respect, and become comfortable with a diverse group of peers. This provides different opportunities for friendships, for appreciation, for discussion. If you think about it, in our normal classroom here at Lincoln, we have a diverse peer group. So just like we would at Lincoln, it's important to have discussions and try to understand why people think, act, or react a certain way. Next, we need to remember that socialization should not be the only reason for our mainstreaming. Students do have IEP goals, but these IEP goals should fit in the general PE class structure or the general team structure. Next, it's important for the teacher to explain various conditions and prepare the class for specific issues. We should explain that Alex doesn't like to be touched, and he may explode and be combative at different times. So as a teacher or an educator, we need to prepare the rest of the class for Alex. If he has something in a certain order, we need to let the students know that the teacher may need to make some equipment modifications. All right, so that is why social acceptance and inclusion is important. Here are some different skills that benefit from providing inclusion. First of all, we can teach people how to interact with a diverse group of peers. This might be just differences between genders, differences between socioeconomic classes, difference between backgrounds, and difference between people with varying levels of abilities. You should tell your students or teammates to make sure they understand how to talk with each other whenever somebody misses that game-winning shot or somebody makes that game-winning goal. Another skill is playing cooperatively. As we learn in most of our sports and games, it takes some cooperation and teamwork to be successful. So this includes communication and working with each other. So that's another important skill that benefits from inclusion. Third, taking turns. If one person does everything, nobody else gets a chance to improve. So it allows us to take turns as a leader, as a quarterback, as the first baseman, as the goalie. So if we all learn different areas, it helps us work more cooperatively in the long term. Another benefit that most of us can deal with is dealing with frustration and anger. I know personally I've been frustrated with this move to online learning due to the fact of all of the paperwork and red tape I've had to deal with as an instructor. I just wanted to be able to get the content out to my students. So I have to learn to deal with that frustration. So when you have different people work together, you can discuss different solutions and deal with that anger and frustration and usually minimize that. Next, another skill is following directions. When different people work together, whether they're students with disabilities or without disabilities, we learn to follow directions, ask for clarification, and even look for examples. The next one that we see a lot in our school setting is listening quietly and staying on task. It's good for groups of students to do some peer remediation as well as to do some peer coaching or working in groups, but staying on task to try to complete an activity is critical. And finally, behaving appropriately to the situation. That's one of the things that students such as Alex with Asperger's syndrome may have a problem doing, is understanding the communication and realizing what's going on in a social setting or social context. I know as a 13-year-old, there were things I probably did that were funny with my peers, but as soon as the teacher walked in or an adult walked in, were probably no longer appropriate. All right, let's move on to our social inclusion activity development assignment. There's specific details online. This is a specific assignment box or submission area in Canvas listed under our week 10 or module 10. So the first thing you'll do is choose one of the skills that benefit from inclusion. That was on the last slide, we just went over that. So you're going to just choose a skill. You'll list that skill and explain it in 1 to 2 sentences. So your whole activity is going to focus on the one skill that you chose. So what you want to do is you're going to have to think and be a little creative here, and you're going to develop some kind of activity that can be used to teach your skill. So this is a 2-part assignment. Part 1 is list and explain your skill. Part 2 is develop an activity. So what you need to do is research an activity that can be used to develop your skill in number 1. You might get on the internet, you might have some discussion, you might look for team type settings, PE type settings, sports type settings, activity settings. So I want you to write 1 to 2 well-written paragraphs to detail the activity you're going to use to teach one of those skills that benefit from inclusion. All right. Explain the activity fully. Provide some kind of sequence of events orders. You might want to bullet point some areas or have a numerical list of some different things you do. I want you to be really creative and original. Don't copy and paste from a website. And then last of all, be very detailed. If when I read through your activity, I can't visualize it from your description and I can't see it, then I can't provide full credit. And I'd like everybody to have a high grade on this. This is due Thursday, March 26th by 8 p.m. And you will submit that through the portal on Canvas, just like you would any other assignment. All right, we'll move along in our presentation. Things a general physical education teacher can do to help facilitate social inclusion. First, you should have a positive attitude. Try to stay positive with the student at all times. Yes, you have to use some different resources such as a therapist, possibly a paraprofessional, some specific peers that have a good relationship, but always try to stay in charge, be firm, but be very positive because a negative attitude with an individual with disability, you'll model that and all your students will see that. Number two, you have to remember to be the teacher for all the students in your classes or on your teams. Don't just focus on the individual with disability with all the instruction, but don't focus on that star peer either. Make sure you provide adequate instruction for everybody in your program or class. All right? There may be an assistance, such as a paraprofessional. You as the general PE teacher, spend time with individuals with disabilities and don't just count on the para to work with them. Make sure you have equal contact with every student. Try to build relationships with all your students, and then plan cooperative activities to have different students work together and be supportive. Number three, you should model appropriate behavior. As the teacher, you need to whisper when you want the group to be very quiet. They'll have to come in, sharpen their listening skills. Everybody will have to be quiet. Or you may use peer modeling when appropriate. Do anything you can to be the leader because all eyes are going to be on you. People are going to imitate what they see. So if you get angry easy, your students are going to get angry with each other easily. Number four, include the individual with disability in as many activities as possible. Provide various activities when needed, but strive to make the activities include everyone when possible. We talked about if a student couldn't possibly play a regular volleyball game to have a side or satellite volleyball activity that mimics it. So that is appropriate, but try to be all inclusive and include everybody in your main activity if possible. Number five, reinforce positive interactions. All right, this means encourage peers to be positive with the individual with disability, act appropriately, try to coach them up, and basically just be a good teammate, classmate at all times. But as a teacher, we need to reinforce that. When we see it done right, we need to call it out and put a spotlight on it so other people see it. Everybody likes to be in the spotlight when things are done well. And number six, the last thing here on our list is be knowledgeable about the individual with disability. You should really strive to know their medical information, as much information as you can about their specific disability or range of ability, possibly some personal information to build relationships, such as what's their favorite activity, their favorite food, their favorite color. The general idea is the better relationship you have with any student, the more you're going to get out of them, and the same holds true for individuals with disabilities. All right, next, how do we prepare peers for social interactions and acceptance? All right, we have 9 ideas here, and we will roll off of number 9 and actually do the activity implementing a circle of friends. All right, first of all, we can invite guest speakers with disabilities. You might bring somebody in that has a disability and allow them to speak to your class and show their varying range of abilities and things that they can do. That's always a great idea. Number 2 is use role playing. You might do some activities that simulate a disability. Think of our different things we did in our lab setting right before we left for spring break. You might put dark glasses on somebody to simulate somebody that's blind. You might make everybody play a game, or not make, but have everybody play a game on a scooter to simulate a wheelchair. So you should always then, after you role play, have some kind of reflection or discussion time so people can then think and understand more deeply. Number 3, if you have any rule modifications, make sure we try to discuss those. Anytime you change something, it's important to let the class understand, consider it. All right. Up front, you might let the class decide on some rule changes, or let the individual with disability ask for a specific rule change. This might make the activity easier for everybody, or more fun for everybody. So make sure you discuss some rule modifications before and then reflect on them after. Number 4, you can always lead some kind of discussion on disabilities. This might be in a classroom setting. Provide information on a specific disability, possibly provide an opportunity to discuss differences and similarities. And you might pick out specific disabilities for somebody in the class and let them share, or let them share about working with somebody with a disability in their family or out in the community. So students will always take part in these interactions. Number 5, you might consider some famous people who have disabilities. If you look in the textbook on page 287 and 288, if you have the textbook in front of you, you can turn to that list. There's a variety of people, including sports stars. Think about Jim Abbott, baseball player, happened to have one arm. Lance Armstrong, right? He dealt with cancer and was a cycling guru, although he's had a fall from grace. Magic Johnson had to deal with HIV. Winston Churchill was labeled with learning disabilities. Tom Cruise has dyslexia. Just think how he has to be able to read scripts, even though he mixes up the letters and words within the script. Ray Charles was blind. Abraham Lincoln, who our university here was named after, Lincoln University, suffered from depression and a disorder of the connective tissue. So we can talk about famous people who have disabilities and relate those to our different activities. Number 6, you can always use examples from movies or videos. If we go back to the textbook on page 282, there's a list of a variety of different movies and TV shows. Think about Forrest Gump, Rain Man, A Beautiful Mind, Simon Birch, The Miracle Worker, or even Mask. These showed a variety of individuals with different disabilities that overcame those challenges within their life. All right, that's always another good one to use some kind of videos. Number 7, explain how to interact with the person with the disability. Give your students examples of how to communicate, how to talk to the individual, especially when they haven't been in the class yet. You might want to explain, hey, this certain student, you're going to have to use short words. This person, English is their second language, so you might have to use some key words or some gestures, or even do something to translate your language. All right, number 8, provide ongoing information and encouragement. This is just preparing for inclusion and specifically providing encouragement for individuals with disabilities, and spotlighting the individuals that accept these peers and go above and beyond to be either a friend or a coach. Don't always let them be in that coaching role either. Coaching and communication should go both ways. And number 9, you can implement a circle of friends. And in a circle of friends, you're just considering everybody you interact with on a regular basis. So we'll move to that, and we will actually do that activity so you can visualize what this activity is. In a circle of friends, you should get out a piece of paper and do this activity along with me. You're going to draw 3 big circles on your paper, like I have a yellow circle, a blue circle, and a purple circle. And then you're going to put a dot in the middle. That dot in the middle is you. My purple circle, the innermost circle, list people that you interact with on a daily basis. So what I want you to do is list at least 5 people, first and last names or relationship. This could be Patrick Oligschlager, Crystal Mosley, or it could be somebody such as mom and dad. Right? Those are people you interact with pretty much on a daily basis. Your next circle is my blue circle, and that is people you interact with occasionally. These might be people that you have a class with a couple times a week, or people you interact with on a regular basis, such as at work a couple times a week, the person at Starbucks when you get your coffee every morning. So they're people you interact with occasionally. And then in number 4, the most outermost circle, list some people that you know you might be in the same room with or classroom with that you never really interact with. You see them, you know who they are, but you don't really have any relationship or interact with them. You don't know anything except maybe where they sit in a classroom. All right, you should have 5 people for your number 2, 3, and 4 here. Make that list. And then the idea behind this activity would be, why do you not interact with the people in the yellow? Is it because they're different than you? If it is, that's when you can open the door to some honest communication, some reflection, and find ways to make your circle even bigger. All right, so you will complete this activity. You're going to draw your circles, and then I want you to, number 1 is you, number 2, people you interact with daily, and give me 5 specific examples. Number 3, people you interact with occasionally, give me 5 specific examples. And number 4, people that you're in the same vicinity with. Think of our classroom, if you can't think of anything else, that we had the first 8 weeks, and list 4 or 5 people you never interact with. All right, you will do this on a piece of paper. It can be handwritten. Take a picture, and you will submit it on Canvas on Thursday, March 26th by 8 p.m. So that is your second assignment or activity for this chapter. Make sure you get that done. Let's move along to some of the different programs. So a couple disability awareness programs are the Paralympic School Day. The Paralympic School Day is a disability awareness program, and it's designed to integrate Paralympic ideals and values with educational activities that create awareness and understanding of disabilities and Paralympic sports. All right, if you remember, our Paralympics are Olympic type activities that are done with individuals with disabilities, such as in a wheelchair. All right. The PSD, Paralympic School Day curriculum, includes a fun set of activities are appropriate for children aged 6 to 15. It could go a little bit before that or after that, even on to adults. And they promote education about the Paralympics, some individual differences, and acceptance. If you look at page 20 or 277 in your textbook, there's some different information about the Paralympic School Day. I've actually downloaded the resource, and there are a variety of different activities that you could use. It's really a good resource. It's one of the resources that I've developed a few things for our disability awareness labs. All right, and finally, the activities in the Paralympic School Day program are all cooperative in nature. They promote working together to achieve group goals, so they could be used not only with individuals with disabilities, but they could be used in a classroom that doesn't have an IWD, just to develop some cooperation skills. All right, here's some other information on the Paralympic School Day. This could be an idea such as wheelchair basketball could be an activity. Seated or scooter volleyball with a lower net. You might play goal ball, which is an activity that blind or visually impaired students use. Think of using table tennis instead of tennis. Table tennis, also known as ping pong. So students that can't move around very well, you could lower the ping pong table to have individuals in wheelchairs play. You could just play at the students that had mobility challenges. It's a lot easier to play ping pong or table tennis than it is to play tennis. There are 19 various activity cards, and at the end of this presentation, I'll also have another video presentation. I'll have a link to the Paralympic School Day program. You should watch that video separately. right? Another disability awareness program is the Get Into It program, sponsored by Special Olympics. A lot of us have some experience, and we've had guest speakers or volunteered with Special Olympics over the semester. The Get Into It program is an interactive program designed to promote acceptance and understanding of differences, help educate students on intellectual disabilities, and increase overall participation for individuals with disabilities in the Special Olympics general program. Really, it's a recruiting tool to help our individuals with disabilities see the fun and different activities that Special Olympics programming has to offer. It includes various activities, different athlete stories, tools for anti-bullying campaigns, and guides for role play. So this is another great program that can be used in your general classroom or within your general activities. Right? These activities are designed to infuse character building and meaningful service learning projects into the general physical education classroom. So I will put a link on here too to look into the Get Into It program for Special Olympics. You should browse through their website. It's a really good program that you could use not only in a classroom, you could use with a team or an activity setting. If you work at the Boys and Girls Club, a lot of these different projects could be altered or tweaked to fit within your program. So what are some of our problems in facilitating social inclusion? First of all, placing an individual with disability into the general physical education classroom doesn't necessarily ensure they learn anything or that they're really integrated. Just by having them housed in our classroom or assigning them to that classroom doesn't mean they get appropriate and meaningful social interactions and acceptance. Even if we try to meet their IEP goals through activities, we also have to thoughtfully think about how we integrate them socially and make sure that we prepare the students without disabilities to socially interact with them acceptably. Next, social interactions and acceptance must be carefully planned and facilitated. This means there has to be some kind of systematic idea that the teacher or leader uses and includes various concepts and activities that promote social acceptance. If as a teacher you don't think about it at all, it's probably not going to happen. So you have to plan for it. So you need to plan for social interactions between your regular general physical education students and your individuals with disabilities. So placing an individual with disability into a general activity or physical education program without preparing your students or participants that don't have disabilities can lead to various feelings. And these could be feelings from the individual with disability or feelings with your general students or participants. They might include confusion, frustration, and resentment. All right, it's important to overcome those with good, fluid communication. And finally, physical educators, teachers' assistants, and activity leaders can accidentally create barriers to social interactions and acceptance. What does that mean? What would happen if the PE teacher really just focuses on a behavior problem of our student, such as when Alex, our student up front that we discussed earlier in the lesson, we moved the equipment, so he exploded. If we didn't prepare our classroom for that, and we don't have good, effective communication, we could start creating a barrier to social acceptance. How would peers feel if a physical education teacher didn't explain why the individual with a heart problem doesn't have to run the mile like everyone else in class? Hey, coach, that's not fair. Why does Tim not have to run the mile and all the rest of us do? I'm sweating and dying out here. So that would be where we could communicate about different disabilities with our students and explain why students have to do sometimes alternative activities. So let's move on to discussing some common problems and solutions for our social inclusion and acceptance. All right, we have 5 of them here. First of all, if you have a teacher assistant, an assistant coach, a para, a volunteer, sometimes they just try too hard. They might overcompete in the activity because they want to win. They might make sure that the student they're working with gets a spotlight. So we need to train the para to allow the individual with disability to have some kind of independence and show the para how they can work with that student, provide them an opportunity to succeed or fail on their own before they jump in, and how the para can work with the whole class while still keeping an eye on the individual they're assigned to. Next, number 2, if the individual with disability cannot effectively participate in the general activity, we might develop an alternative activity and have the peers rotate through their specially designed station. This is where we can use station activities, and we may keep the individual with disability in a specific station that works for them and allow their para to be there as well. Number 3, sometimes your peers will start to just feel like they're a tutor instead of a friend or a peer. So we need to have students rotate the peer tutor versus participant roles. How can we do that? When we have each student do a peer observation or a peer evaluation of each other. That way we can force the rotation so the individual with disability has a chance to become the peer tutor and the participant. So having those roles are important because we want to develop relationships where individuals with disabilities can have friends of their own age and their classmates. Number 4, don't always have students with disabilities grouped together. Try to use that idea of class scheduling of natural proportions. If you're scheduling classes or activities, if we have 10 different PE slots and we have 20 individuals with disabilities, we should have 2 in each class slot. We shouldn't put all 20 of them together. If we do, that would be an adaptive, specialized PE class. So divide your class into groups. Try not to always put the individuals with disabilities in a group together. If you have multiple ones in a classroom, although they might gravitate towards each other, try to divide them evenly amongst different teams. And last, number 5, you might have peers that are not accommodating to the individuals with disabilities. If this occurs, you might discuss the attitude and appropriate behavior with different students. This could be a whole class lesson on a disability or on teamwork or bonding or communication skills. It might be preparing peers for social acceptance in a one-on-one or individual conversation. So make sure we model accommodating behavior, praise it when it happens, and if we have non-accommodating behavior, we immediately stop it, point it out, and have a discussion to try to discontinue that. All right, our last topic here is preparing paraprofessionals to facilitate social aspects of inclusion. So your para could be your paraprofessional, it could be a teacher assistant, right? It could be a parent or a plus tutor that's rotating with your student. We want to show them how they can move away and help other students while keeping an eye on the individual with disability. You might assign that TA to the group as a coach, but let them know that they have to allow the individual with disability chances to do things on their own and not always have somebody hover over them. Give them a chance to fail or even succeed or even learn on their own, and then step in when needed. That sometimes the paraprofessional is going to be overeager to try to help their individual succeed at all costs. So here's specific examples of how to promote interactions between peers with and without disabilities. The teacher assistant can encourage peers to choose the individual with disability as a partner or a teammate. They might just jump in and say, hey, pair up. We're going to pair up with Alex. Come on, Jim. All right. Next, when an individual with disability needs assistance to retrieve balls or go to another station, the TA can actually do that or encourage peers to assist, because a lot of times individuals with disabilities take a lot more effort to just move area to area. So bringing along equipment or retrieving balls can be an added burden. And then finally, when playing in groups, the TA can encourage peers to help the individual with disability know where to stand, what to do, provide their peers with some coaching tips that the peers can then relate back to the individual with disability. So we need to prepare our paraprofessionals and provide them with some training and support, or else they could do one of two things. They could overhelp and not allow the individual with disability to learn in the activity, or they could underhelp and just stand on the side, and then the individual with disability doesn't get the assistance they are designed to get from that paraprofessional. So let's summarize Chapter 17. All right, here are 4 important parts to kind of reflect on our Chapter 17 learning. Number 1, an important benefit of mainstreaming is to provide an opportunity for social development. Remember, this is only one component. The individual with disability must also be able to meet IEP goals that fit within our general physical education or activity curriculum and plan. Number 2, it's critical to prepare students for the individual with disability, if at possible, before they are integrated into the class. Number 1, this develops disability awareness. We can provide information on how to accept this new student into our classroom, what some possible triggers are, and some possible ways to have a positive interaction with their new friend. Number 3, provide a supportive atmosphere. We need to use programs that provide a curriculum to help develop social inclusion and positive character traits. This could be our Special Olympics Get Into It program, our Paralympic School Day, or some other kind of character development. Those should be integrated into our programs, whether it's a physical education class, a team setting, or a different community-based recreation program. And number 4, understand common issues and some solutions. We always need to have a plan. We need to be prepared, but we also need to be able to adapt to things that are happening. So if we have an understanding of some common issues and what we can do, when we see it, we can then jump in and make sure things occur well. All right, the next thing we'll do is Saturday, March 28th, so this is a couple days later, is our Chapter 17 review assignment. All right, like I told you at the very beginning, our chapter objectives were these 6 different areas. All right, they're listed here, 1 through 6. They're also on a specific assignment in the Canvas portal that explains this assignment and has those 6 questions. You can go back through the textbook or this presentation to get answers for each of those. What I want you to do is, you don't have to rewrite the question, but I want numbered 1 through 6, and I want 1, 2, 3, or 4 well-written, descriptive, college-level writing answers to each question. All right, when I say explain 6 things in number 3, I need you to not just list the 6 things, but list them and explain them. All right, so this should be probably about a 1-page document, and you're reviewing the chapter. If you do just copy and paste these questions into your document and then answer them, it would be great to use as a study guide for your Unit 3 exam. So this assignment is due on Canvas by Saturday, March 28th at 8 p.m. So let's wrap up our learning for today with our to-do list. Hopefully you did number 1 and 2 on this list. You've read Chapter 17, and if you've got to this point, you've watched our Chapter 17 video presentation. There's also a couple links I'm going to provide you on the Canvas page with this YouTube video link about the Paralympic School Day and the Get Into It program. You might want to browse those specific links as well. I would expect you to do that, honestly. The last 2 on this list are highlighted. Those are in a separate video. Read the handout on the case study assignments, our updated virtual assignment information. There's 3 parts to that. There's a specific handout. Read through that. And then watch, it's a separate video, but it's a video explaining the case study assignment, just like I would go over in the classroom setting. So that's later in this module. So make sure you go to that section, read the handout, and watch the video on that. And I will recap our assignments for this chapter just one last time. All 3 of the top assignments are assignments that I detailed in the video. So if you watched the video and read the textbook material, you should be able to do these. If you just send me an email saying I don't know, the first thing I'm going to do is ask, did you watch the video? Number 1, social inclusion activity development. That is where you pick one of these social inclusion activities and you develop an activity to be able to teach that. It's due Thursday, March 26th by 8 p.m. Assignment number 2, also due on Thursday by 8 p.m., is the Circle of Friends activity. That's pretty much self-explanatory. You will complete that activity, take a picture of it, and upload it on Canvas. And the last one I just discussed was the Chapter 17 review assignment. It's due Saturday, March 28th by 8 p.m. That is basically a review of some important points in this chapter. So make sure you do put a well-written response to that and then save that document so you can use it as a study guide for the Unit 3 exam. And then the last thing, make sure you go to the specific page in this module that discusses your case study assignments, because your case study paper is going to be due next week. Your presentation visual will be the following week. And then the last week of this unit, your video presentation on your case study will be due. We hope you have a good day. Hopefully you've learned something from this online presentation. If you have any questions or discussions, feel free to email me. And if we need to, we can set up a Zoom virtual environment to have continued discussion. Thanks. Have a great day.